Today, we're going to take a look at the difference between a mask and an adjustment. I know that a lot of people have questions about what are the differences between the two, and specifically, how the heck does that apply inside of On1 Photo RAW? Now, if you aren't an On1 user, I'll say that this is still a very universal technique and terminology to understand because it can be a little confusing when someone says, I masked this area, and you're like, okay, well, that's great, but I don't fully understand what that means. Well, by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what it means to mask an area and to apply an adjustment. Now, if you'd like to pick up On1 Photo RAW and save a little bit of money in the process, consider using my coupon code FreeWillPhotos20. It is an affiliate coupon, which means I make a commission from everyone who uses it, but it's at no extra cost to you. It's a win-win. Now, let's go ahead and jump into the computer and take a look at the difference between a mask and an adjustment. So here we are inside of On1 Photo RAW, and before we dive way too deep into everything, let me just explain the difference between a mask and an adjustment, so that way we're on the same sheet of music. And then I'll talk about the nuances here inside of On1 Photo RAW when it comes to that. The first step is understanding what the heck a mask is. And a mask, in simplest terms, is just a selection of pixels on your image. That's it. Just painting over a portion of the image and saying, I want you On1 or whatever photo editing software you're using to apply an adjustment in this area. The adjustment is the actual values that you tweak. Those are the sliders. Now, both of these work together because if you crank up an adjustment and you don't apply a mask, it's going to go over the entire image. However, if you apply a mask, it's only going to go in the areas that you instruct your photo editing software to apply the adjustment to. And that's the reason why a lot of people just like to simplify and say, well, I masked in a little bit of exposure in this area. So now that we understand the terminology, let's talk about how On1 kind of adopts that terminology. So where I think the confusion comes in with masking inside of On1 is it combines creating an adjustment and creating a mask all at once just to make things a little bit more faster and streamlined for the user. And that can be confusing if I'm telling you that these are two different things, but On1 is creating both of them at the same time. Let me explain what I mean by that. If I want to select the subject and I come over here to the add adjustment and I click this button here that says subject, well, On1 is going to create a mask and create an adjustment at the same time. Let me go ahead and press the letter O so you can see what I'm talking about. This is my masking overlay. The purple area on the screen is the area that is going to receive my adjustment. As I mentioned earlier, if I did not create a mask, then the adjustments that I would make would go over the entire image. And we don't want that. This is why the mask and the adjustment, they go hand in hand. And so with On1 creating the mask at the same time that it also assigns an adjustment module, it just makes it a little bit easier. So I don't have to create the adjustment and then mask the area in. If I go ahead and just increase the exposure here, you'll notice that only the person in the image is getting brighter. Nowhere else in the image is getting brighter. Now, an issue that I see a lot of people having with On1 is understanding the difference between the masking properties and the adjustment itself. And so to access the masking properties, if I come over here to the word adjustment, and to the left of that, there's going to be a little thumbnail. And this is the show hide masking options. If I click this, it's going to give me a dialog box, and this is the properties box. But inside of the properties box, there are three tabs. The second tab is the masking tab. And this is the reason why I call this the masking properties dialog box. This is something separate from the adjustment. However, What this tool allows you to do is to make the selection on the image of where you want ON1 to apply your adjustments. Now, let's take a look at the masking properties dialog box because I think that understanding how to navigate it is really going to be helpful. We have two sections here that have these little masking icons. The first one is target mask, and this is just a combination of the next section, which is mask layers. Mask layers, you can have as many as you need in order to make a very complicated selection. Or you can have as few as you need to make simple selections like we have right now. There's only one mask layer. And so there's the thumbnail or the target mask is only showing us this single mask layer. And then underneath here, we have overlay options. And overlay options are extremely helpful that when you press the letter O to show your mask, you have a few different options for the mode. And then you also have a way of selecting if you want to see what's being affected or the area that's not being affected. I recommend you leave the show section to affected and don't change it. What you can change is the mode that you are viewing on the overlay. If I click this little drop down arrow next to color overlay, the mode that I usually switch between is going to be color overlay and grayscale. Grayscale, it just gives you a black and white mask, and depending on the degree of something being selected, well, you can have a grayscale mask. Now, that's outside of the purview of what we're going to be talking about today. But if that's something you're interested in, drop a comment below and say, hey, I need you to explain what the heck the grayscale mask is even showing me. And I will absolutely show you that. But for today, all you need to know is you can change the overlay mode. And for today's purposes, we're just going to use the color overlay because that's the easiest one to see. And if you're switching from Lightroom over to ON1, this is going to be very familiar to you. Now, another area where I see a lot of people getting confused with masking and adjustments inside of ON1 Photo RAW is this plus icon. You'll notice that in mask layers, I have a plus icon. And then if I come over here to add adjustment, I have a plus icon that says more. There's a difference between both of these icons. The plus icon in mask layers allows you to work on the exact same mask. And so in this case, let's say I wanted to make these columns a little bit brighter as well. I don't have to create a new adjustment for that. All I have to do is come over here to mask layers, click the plus icon, and then I'm just going to use a brush because it's going to be simple. Now, you have to ask yourself, what do I want to do? I want to add to the mask, meaning I'm going to select the add mode. So when I click on add, it gives me a brush, and now I can just paint over these columns. Now, this is showing me that purple overlay because that's what I have selected. But if I turn off the mask overlay, you'll see that I've made this column exposed. And then of course, if I paint it over here, I can do the exact same thing. And now I've included this selection into my mask. Now, earlier, I mentioned that the target mask is a combination of the mask layers. And I want to show you what I mean by that. So if you look at this little thumbnail, you'll notice that there's white on both sides of the subject, and that's just combining both of these masks together. Now, of course, this little thumbnail, it's hard to see what the heck is going on. Well, what if I told you that when you press the letter O, you're not looking at the mask layers, you're actually looking at the target mask on your actual image. So you get a better representation of what areas in the image are being selected in order to receive the adjustments that you make on the right side of ON1 Photo RAW or in the adjustments engine or module. If I turn off this brush, well, take a look. My masking overlay, it updates and it shows me that right now I'm only going to apply an adjustment to the subject. And this is a non-destructive way of trying to figure out, do you like what you're getting? Now, if I turn off this overlay and I click the brush mask adjustment or mask layer and turn that back on, then what it's doing is it's showing me exactly what happens here. Or maybe I don't want the subject to be brighter. I can turn off the mask adjustment that's on the subject. And of course, this thumbnail updates. I like to showcase that because a lot of people don't realize that the target mask is the mask overlay when you're actually looking at it. So now if I want to add more pixels into this masking selection and apply the adjustment from the adjustment module onto my image, I can come over here to mask layers, hit the plus icon, and then come down to brush and click add one more time. What this does is it creates an additional brush option. Now, this is a critical step because I made this mistake in recording this particular video. You want to make sure that you have this light gray outline along the new brush tool that you selected. Because if you don't, and you have the second one selected, well, guess what? You're going to be painting with that brush tool on this portion of the mask layer. You don't want that. And so we're going to click on this top one, and then I'm just going to go ahead and change this over to paint. I'm just going to paint this in. And so now I've created a new masking selection on my mask, or on my image, I should say. And so it's all combined together. Now, of course, I can turn these off and on and mix and match as many ways as I need to in order to really enhance the selection. And that's the difference between the mask, where you have all of these properties and the capability of really enhancing the selection that you're making, versus the adjustment module, where you're just applying the actual increases or whatever these values that you want to use to the overall selected area. Hopefully that was helpful with unpacking the difference between adjustments and masking. I know that this can be confusing, but when you take the time to really unpack this, I think it's going to be helpful, especially with interpreting what people are saying when they say things like, I've masked in the sky, or I masked in this exposure adjustment, or I increased the shadows in just the face using masking, things like that. You'll know that inside of ON1, there is a difference between an adjustment and the masking property. But on top of that, the little plus icon for mask layers is what's going to allow you to further manipulate a mask for a particular adjustment, whereas the plus icon for more is going to add a new adjustment to your image, and then you're going to have to modify the mask for that. If you got questions, leave it in the comment section below. If you'd like to learn more, consider signing up for a training call with me. A link for that can be found in the description box below. Until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creative. Peace.